Welcome. I see people joining the call. Welcome, welcome. We'll give a few more minutes for people to join, but we're so glad you're here. That's right. That's right, Oscar. Let's go Heat. Arturo, we're excited too. We're glad you're here because we got some great speakers from the Miami Heat here. We're excited about Clara and Josh. I'll introduce them in a minute, but I'm just going to put up a poll, okay? So welcome, welcome. We've got Clara Stroude-Vazquez and Josh Goshin that are going to join us in a minute. But before we do that, we're going to put up a poll. So everybody out there, I'm going to launch a poll. We're going to do a fun question. Tell me, what would you do if you won $1 million from the lottery? About half of you have joined in. If you're just joining us now, put an answer in the poll that's on the screen. It's in progress. What would you do if you won $1 million from the lottery? Okay, I'm going to end it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it looks like the most of you would invest it. I'm very proud of you all. I'm glad to hear that. Only 2 people said they would spend it on an amazing party. Well, I don't blame you. That's everybody's dream, right? That's great. A lot of you would provide things for the people you love. Awesome. And you donate it to starving children. I love it. I love it. Great job. Great job. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and start this show. Welcome everyone to our online speaker series, what we call the CEO Chats. As you know, our goal is here to explore different careers. And today we are thrilled to have 2 speakers, Clara Stroude-Vazquez, who is the Director of Heat Culture. She'll tell you more about that in a minute. And Josh Goshin, who is the Director of Game Presentations and Events, and he'll share what he does too. Before we begin, I do want to mention that after the interview, we're going to welcome all the questions like we have in the past. But please go ahead, if you have a question while we're talking, throw it in the Q&A box. So as soon as we're done with the interview, we can start looking through all the questions and ask. We'll get to as many as we can. If we don't get to yours, we apologize. I know sometimes people send in the same question. So we'll get to as many as we can. And we appreciate you doing that and being here with us today. And Clara and Josh, thank you both for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Okay, so let's get started. Clara, let me start with you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, including where you were born and raised, your schooling, stuff like that.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I was born in the Caribbean on a tiny island called Grenada. It's in the Southern Caribbean. So if you've ever heard of Barbados, where Rihanna's from, or places like Trinidad, it's near there. My mom's Grenadian, my dad's from Barbados, Bajan. So I lived in Grenada for a little bit, lived in Barbados, and then we moved to Washington, D.C. when I was pretty young. And I grew up between the 2 places. Went to all through up to high school and then graduated and went to college in Baltimore for a little bit, thinking I wanted to be a physical therapist when I grew up, but not realizing I don't really like science that much. So physical therapy is definitely a lot of science and research. And so I decided, what do I want to do that I'm good at? And I played sports all my life. I played basketball, field hockey, softball for a little bit, lacrosse. So I decided I wanted to go into Parks and Rec. And I went to school in North Carolina, finished up my school in North Carolina. And then once I finished there, I moved here to Florida to Barry University for grad school because I thought I wanted to be a basketball coach. And that clearly didn't work out because I work for the Heat and I'm not a coach. So that's about it. I'm married and I have a 3rd grader and 2 dogs.
Oh, I was on mute. Sorry. That's great. Thank you. And Josh, tell us about your background.
Okay, so my background is rooted here in Miami. I'm born and raised, mostly in Hialeah. So shout out to Hialeah. I went to Hialeah High for high school. And there is where my, I guess, affinity for game presentation really started. I was a sports fan, a Heat fan growing up at all times, obviously a Jordan fan as well, for those who've been watching The Last Dance. And from Hialeah High, graduated and went to the University of Miami. Started as a journalism student, and a couple years into that program, kind of realized that journalism wasn't exactly the right fit, but I learned about a major called sport administration. And I looked into that major and switched majors to sport administration. And it kind of changed my life for the better. My mom's Cuban, my dad's American. They met down here. Yeah, that's pretty much my background. Very, very faithful to Hialeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you're a Miamian, born and raised. I am too. There's not a lot of us. And then Clara, I got my undergrad outside of the state. I was in Georgia, but I got my master's at Barry. So we're both Barry alums too. So it's good. I have a connection with both of you. So I'm glad to hear this. And you know what? You brought up a good point, Josh. I think it's good for the kids to hear too. A lot of people go to college with one thing in mind. I know I did, and you change. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you come up with new ideas when you see what's out there in the world. In college, you can change your majors. And look at what happened. It was a really good thing. So Clara, tell us a little bit about your background with the Miami Heat. Like, how long have you worked for the Miami Heat and your career journey? Because I know that often when we started at an organization like the Heat, or a lot of different companies, you might start out in one area and then change and move up the ladder and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I started at the Heat in 2003 when Dwayne Wade got there. I started as an intern. It was part of my degree from Barry to get an internship. And I was coaching at Barry. I was an assistant women's basketball coach, and I left my coaching position to get this internship at the Heat because it was a good position. I wasn't really interested in professional basketball or professional sports in general, but it was a good opportunity and I took it. And as you'll hear from Josh, a lot of us start off as interns at the Heat and we kind of grow with the company. So the Heat was probably my first big girl job. And I started as an intern, and halfway through my internship, somebody recommended that I apply for a full-time position there. They were getting promoted out of the position and they thought I'd be good for it. And I really didn't want it, honestly. I wanted to move back to DC. I had other plans. And they kind of forced me, which was good. She strong-armed me a little bit. And I applied for the position, as did a lot of the other interns. And I ended up getting the position. So I started out as the marketing assistant, where I was the assistant to our chief marketing officer and kind of helped with the department that Josh heads up right now, which is game operations. So I did that for a few years. And then I went to my boss and kind of talked to him about what was next and where I was growing to and, you know, that type of thing. And so he promoted me to entertainment coordinator, and I got a bigger role in overseeing our talent, our in-game talent. So I managed the dancers, our mascot Bernie, the Extreme team at the time, Heat Tree Band, Golden Oldies, etc. And I just grew from there. So I ended up as a marketing manager after that, where I had an even bigger role with our talent and other things in the marketing department. And then last summer, my boss was given a new department. They created a new department that kind of centered around our full-time employee engagement and development. Because when you work, you're still learning. So you never stop learning and growing, even when you finish school. And he came to me and told me he thought I would be good for this position. And so I accepted it. And so now I'm the director of Heat Culture, but I've kind of grown along the way with the Heat and transitioned and, you know, filled new roles as they became available.
That's great. It's a great way to move up. You learn each time, like you said, you have to learn a lot on the job, right? And you keep growing. What does the Heat Culture do? So like, what does that entail?
So like I said, it's engagement of our employees. So you guys know as students, you go to school and there's some classes that you really love, and it's because of the environment and the teacher and the people in the class. And there's some classes that you really hate, and it may not necessarily be the subject matter, but what's around you. And that's the same thing with employee engagement. The work that we do, whatever our positions are, we may love them, but the environment strongly affects what you're doing in terms of whether or not you like where you are. So what is it like when you go into work every day? Is it a fun place to work? Is it stuffy? Like, our environment used to be a lot more what they call corporate, and we would wear suits and things like that. And we've kind of loosened up where we're wearing jeans. So it makes it a little more relaxed and a little more fun. And you will always hear people from the Heat, from our players to our front office staff to our part-time staff, talk about we're family. So it's a real family environment. So when you go to work, you feel like you're going from your house with your immediate family to your house with your Heat family. So I'm tasked with coming up with events to keep our employees engaged. So fun events like having food trucks come and doing the Christmas party, but I'm also tasked with doing events to help develop our employees, like classes. Like Josh just took our managers training class that we just offered. We help our IT folks with setting up classes that help our staff learn about different IT programs we have. So coming up with speakers to come in and speak, just like you guys are having speakers come in and speak. We have people come in and speak to our staff, so setting that up. And then we have what's called employee resource groups. And these are groups for minority groups in our office, like women or African Americans, Latinx, where these groups get together and kind of advocate for themselves in the office for topics and things that might, affect them.
That's great. I think more and more corporations are really working hard to develop these types of programs. And I love that the Heat is doing that too. Josh, okay, so tell me a little bit about a typical day or week for you and or talk about a little bit about your job too and what it entails. And then talk about a typical day.
Well, so Clara hit a little bit on what game presentation really is. And for those who don't know, it's basically everything that you see at a basketball game that's not the actual basketball. So from the minute you really get out of your car or Uber or whatever it is, however you're getting to the game, music that you hear on the exterior of the building, entertainment teams that are out there just performing for you guys. It's really all of that until you get into the building, and then you sit down, and if you get there early enough, we're putting videos up on the center hung, we're playing more music inside, we're showing people and fan cam kind of stuff. And then we get into the pregame when the players are coming out to warm up. So there's more music, more videos. Then there's the actual basketball game. And then there's a timeout. And during that timeout, everything that happens during that timeout falls under game presentation. So dancers performing, band performing, DJ performing, the video that runs on the screen, on-court shooting contest or in-crowd trivia contest, that's all game presentation. So you do that during the timeouts, then you have a halftime. That's more game presentation, usually a big performance on the court or another video presentation or some kind of activity. And then you have postgame, and then postgame celebrations, more entertainment, all that stuff is all falls under the game presentation umbrella. So that's why, like I said, it's everything that's not basketball, because we can't control that part. And then, the kind of particular day for that part of the business is prepping all of that stuff. So you guys come to the game and you think, you're coming out of your car, you're walking up the stairs to the arena and you hear the music. Well, it's not just random music that you're hearing, it's specifically planned entertainment for you so that you have this vibe when you are coming to the arena. So like on a Vice game, you will hear music that takes you back to a Vice time frame, right? And you come into the building and all the graphics are going to be Vice themed. So what we're doing leading up to that game is prepping all of that stuff and programming it all over the building, changing out graphics, changing out music, coming up with the entertainment that wraps you up in that theme as well. So really scripting and meticulously planning out every piece of the fan experience from the time you leave your car to the time you get back into your car or Uber or Metro Rail, however it is you choose to get that game, to get to the game. And so I'm writing scripts for each game that include, timing, breakdowns, timeouts. Sean knows this very well. he taught me everything I know about timings and managing the floor and things of that nature. So very instrumental in my growth as well. And using Excel, I put in all the information of what we're going to do to entertain the fans pretty much from minute to minute on a game night.
That's high energy and a lot of fun, but a lot of work. I have no doubt putting together all this stuff. So I'm going to ask everybody to drop in the chat. What do you like better when you go to the Heat games? Do you like to watch the basketball players play the actual basketball, or do you like all the stuff that Josh is in charge of? I hope some people put at least, because I know it's fun to watch the basketball players, but I love all the stuff in between. That's what I live for when I go to these games. I mean, it's so much fun. It's the high energy. So I want to hear what you guys think. Everything. Someone said everything. I'm not sure. Basketball and food. Oh, a lot of people like the concessions. That's true. Both. They like both. Getting food. Well, Josh doesn't cook the food, but he makes sure you have that atmosphere, right, Josh?
Yeah, I don't cook the food, but I'll tell you where to get the food.
You'll tell us which one's the best?
Yes.
What is the best
I'll tell you when there's sales and stuff.
Oh, okay. That's great. So, you know what, Josh, tell me a little bit. I forgot to ask you about how you made it to the Heat and what you did before, because you have something interesting right behind you that I want you to share with the kids. Yeah,
this is me actually dressed up as a Slurpee. So my journey to this position into the Miami Heat was very, very fortunate and in the right place at the right time. So like I said, I was at the University of Miami studying sport administration. And I got an email from one of our advisors about this cool job that was opening up with the Miami Heat. They were looking for people for their entertainment team, young, energetic professionals. And at the time, the team was called the Hoop Troop. So I applied, I sent an email, went in for the interview, and luckily I got the job. So Sean and Clara are very instrumental in this path and in this growth, because Clara, like she said, she was working in marketing and game presentation at the time. So this was 2006. So after the Heat won the first championship, my first night of work was the ring ceremony on October 30th, 2006.
Wow,
so
that's
you
amazing.
You can imagine jumping into the fire feet first as a college kid, and the atmosphere in that building. I'd been going to Heat games. I was a season ticket holder for years before that, but being on the other side as an employee was a culture shock. For sure, 100%. So I have my game script. I'm meeting with Sean. He's giving me my responsibilities. I'm running around executing stuff that was planned by Clara and the team at that time on the Hoop Troop as the interactive team. And one of the things was dressing up as a Slurpee for an on-court activation. So I'm very proud of that part.
I love it.
At the end of that season, I transitioned into needing an internship to graduate from the University of Miami, and I begged and I pleaded and I bothered one of our coworkers, Jennifer Tobias Alvarez, constantly throughout the summer until luckily, right place, right time. I got the in-office internship. So for the 2007-2008 season, I was the in-office intern and little brother to everybody around, because I would just follow them everywhere and try to be included in every single thing, try to be a sponge and absorb every piece of information that I could. I worked game nights with Sean, running activations and helping coordinate hosts and things of that nature. And then at the end of that season, I was luckily enough chosen to head up our summer camp program with kids. Really doesn't really have much to do with game presentation, but it showed the faith and confidence that the organization had in me to help lead that program. So after
be a leader.
Thank you. After that program, after my stint with that program, I got a part-time job in the office doing more of the planning and preparing for the game presentation than just the game night stuff that I was doing before. And that kind of just parlayed eventually when there was the right time at the right place again into the full-time position. And then in 2013, March 22nd, 2013, my birthday, I was tabbed to direct my first regular season NBA game. So,
what a birthday present that was. That's awesome.
Best of all time. Thrown into the fire, and 3 months later is Ray's game 6 shot. So I'm only a few games in, and that's my welcome to the league. And luckily, it's been a fun ride in that position ever since.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That is really great. So I need to ask, I was going to ask Clara about education and training for this job. But before I do that, I do want to mention to everybody out there, and by the way, we have over 100 people that have joined us today. Sean Prospect, our executive director of After School All-Stars, used to work for the Miami Heat. I know some people know that, but maybe not everybody does. And so when they're talking about Sean, Sean actually did what Josh did and more. He was in charge. Actually, some of you have been lucky enough to see he has a game ring because he was a big part of the Heat program for many years. And they worked together, Clara and Josh and Sean. And Josh was saying he misses Sean being his leader and his meetings earlier today. So Sean's a good leader, an amazing leader for After School All-Stars, and he was a great leader at the Miami Heat team. So I just wanted to throw that out there so they understood, because they kept talking about you, Sean. So, and Sean's with us today.
Thank you, Julie. I'll say Clara was my internship partner, so we both started around the same time. So we, it was great growing up together, and obviously, just how life has progressed, and her daughters and my kids and stuff, and the relationships that we've had, and the people that we've met over time. So the two people we have speaking today, I trust them completely. They're great people, and I'm glad they spent some time to talk to you, all-stars out there, to really share their stories, because these are great people, and the words that they're speaking can provide education and insight of what you want to do with your careers and with your lives going forward.
Thank you, Sean. It's so true. I mean, already I can tell the love that you all have for your job, and it's infectious. And that's what we want to share with the kids. You know, you can actually love what you do with a career. And I really see that in both of you. And if you all have questions, remember, throw them in the Q&A now so that we're ready when we're finishing the interview. But we still have lots of questions to ask Clara and Josh. So Clara, tell me, you talked a little bit about your education. I know Josh did too, about sports administration, and you talked about, you know, your basketball coach. But if someone wanted to get into what you do, because I know there's a lot of corporations that do that. I have a friend who did it for C&M for 20 years, what you do, and loved it. But, you know, what would you recommend for people to start looking into in terms of schooling and training to get into either one of your jobs, so that they could follow in your footsteps?
Well, first and foremost, I will say I actually am an adjunct professor at Barry University as well. They called me back a couple years after I graduated to come back and teach, just because I was in the field. And it's one of the things I tell my students: research and look for people who do the things you want to do, and kind of find out what their paths are. People have different paths. Like our CMO went to undergrad with a political science degree, and that's it. He's in a different generation than I am. I have a master's degree and a bachelor's. My undergraduate degree is in Parks and Recreation Facilities Management, because I used to manage pools and I was a lifeguard and a pool operator. So my background for this job is really unconventional and non-traditional. My job's really usually under an HR umbrella. So people who have this type of position usually have HR degrees, you know, learning and development type of degrees. But because we use our marketing department to push our culture, and I have a marketing background, that's why I got here. But I would say definitely researching, if it's this position, if it's Josh's position or any other position, researching what people who are in that position, what their background is, how they got there, what, you know, degrees they have, and then kind of figuring out, you know, what will serve you best. Like I also have a master's of sports administration. So I have 2 degrees that are very similar, but I could do very different things with both of them. And that, I think, allows me to be very versatile. So, you know, for me, even though I don't have the HR degree, and I do have some HR background, because I happen to be an HR manager for a summer, which is really weird. But it allows me to do, you know, be very versatile and do a plethora of things. And coming up with events, I just pull from what I was doing with game operations, and I can come up with events for our staff. So, you know, there's not one degree to get to or one path. It's always learning, learning as much as you can about the thing you want to do, figuring out what, you know, talking to people about what's coming next. You know, sports administration, the way it was in, you know, the 90s when I was growing up and, coming out, as opposed to what it is now, is very different. And so I would advise somebody now, to probably look on more of the tech end in certain aspects than I would have somebody back then. But it's definitely, for me, having some sort of, secondary degree is important in this job and does help. I don't want to pigeonhole you guys and say, go get an HR degree if you want to work in culture, because that's not necessarily the needed thing, but it's definitely beneficial to have that knowledge, and at least in this position.
That makes sense. Yep. And what I heard, though, is really you studied a lot of different areas, and that's what brought you to where you are, and you were able to move up in the company. And
Yeah.
Josh, I really loved, you have a sports administration degree, but I also really love how you were an intern. And both of you, right? Both of you started out as interns. And I think that's so key. Talk a little bit about how it's important to seek out things like that and be a go-getter and, kind of get yourself in the door.
Yeah, I think if I had, one piece of advice to the kids coming up now, it would be that it would be humble, but realize that you're going to do some jobs that you may not always love, but be willing to do whatever job it is. Luckily, again, we work in the toy department of life, which we get from our fearless leader, Coach Riley. So it's always fun for us. But, when I was an intern, Clara can attest to it. I was irritating. I was like, what do you need now? What do you want me to do now? What can I do now? Picked up this box and take it over there. Okay, fine. I'll go down to the marketing cage and do the inventory of 5,000 t-shirts and what each one of them says on them. Things like that, school's obviously important, but there's nothing better than hands-on education when you're at a job. And that's what an internship really affords you, is getting your hands dirty and learning every part, and good or bad, of a job. And that's when you'll know whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's invaluable. It's invaluable lessons. That's great. Okay, so you know what? Let's do a second poll to get the kids to answer another question. I forgot to ask you what you all would have done with the first question, which is what you would have done if you won $1 million. But let's put the poll up, and then you guys can answer while they answer the poll before we go on to talk about what you're doing nowadays. So poll, this is the second poll I'm setting out there. Here we go. I'm going to launch it. How many championships has the Miami Heat won? Let's see how many real Heat fans are out there. And while they're answering the question, Clara and Josh, tell us, what would you have done if you won $1 million?
Well, I already have a plan for this.
I love it.
My husband and I have actually talked about this, as a couple, what we would do. So I think we do a combination of what was on the poll. Because we definitely have talked about investing money so that it can make money for us down the road. We definitely have talked about giving money to our families and loved ones, and donating money to different causes that we're kind of enamored with. Actually, funny story, one of my friends in high school's parents won $1 million, and what she told us in class was that the money, $1 million is not what you think it is. And this was back in 90 something. So $1 million is not, you think it's a ton of money, but it's not. And she said, after the taxes and they had paid off their house, there wasn't a ton of money left, but they were comfortable.
Right. I think that's true. Once you pay taxes, which is half, right? And then you pay your bills, right? There's not that much left, but it's nice to have that comfort. Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with keeping a little bit of it for a little party. Nothing wrong with that.
That is true.
Josh, how about you? What would you have done for $1 million? While we finish up the poll in progress.
Probably same thing. I would have tried to keep a little bit for each of those options: investing, helping out the family, donating to a good cause, and then whatever's left, I'll throw a nice little party for me.
Good for you.
With Pitbull as your guest.
Yes. Oh yeah.
DJ Irie as my DJ.
And DJ Matt, and yeah. Okay, I'm going to end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll share results. Okay, so Clara and Josh, what's the right answer? Is it A, 6, B, 2, C, 8, D, 3, and E, 1? And look, the majority of the group got it. Good for you all.
Good job.
That's awesome. Good job, everyone. Okay, so let's keep going. I know right now I really want to address how we're dealing with life with COVID-19 and the pandemic. I want to ask both of you, how you're doing personally, dealing with this this pandemic that we're in, and then how you're living in this new world and having to adapt to the changes in your careers as well as your life. And tell me, what you're doing now, working from home, and are you working from home? And then, how do you see it changing in the future too? So, Clara, why don't you start?
Okay. Yes, I'm working from home. I feel like I'm logging some more hours than I did when I was in the office because I don't have a commute. So it's get up and walk from my bedroom to the office. But it's an interesting time because we're doing a lot of forward thinking, and I know Josh will agree with this, about what life is going to look like after this for us with work, just because sports is such a social activity, and we may not be back to 100% social for a long time. So how do we handle that? How do we handle the changes in business with other organizations that we work with that are doing their business differently? For me, it's a lot of thinking about our staff and how to keep them engaged and connected and, doing things like Zoom, just meetups and, fun times as opposed to actual work. So it's definitely a different world for us right now. And it's challenging, but fun just to be creative and sit down and come up with creative ideas for how we can do our business in the future. Personally, I've been kind of undertaking some personal development and reading and doing some studies and things like that. I've been supposedly learning how to play the guitar for the last couple of years, and I picked it up and then my guitar string popped. So now I'm like looking at my husband like, I really can't do this right now, but eventually, hopefully I'll get to pick up my guitar again. But just doing fun things and enjoying spending time with my family. I have a stepson who doesn't live here, so trying to keep connected with him because he's in Portland and making sure that he's okay, and just cutting ourselves some slack for sleeping in late or, eating all the snacks in the kitchen. But yeah.
I think that's good. Like the Europeans do, they take a little time for themselves each day, and they become very productive. They say it even makes them more productive. So I think that's something that we as Americans are learning during this, which is something good that's coming out of this tragedy.
Agreed.
Josh, what would you like to add to that? Tell us what what you're doing and dealing with right now.
Yeah, and working in such a live event-driven part of the business, we've had no choice but to look forward, right? We know what the guidelines are. We know we're not going to do any of those events right now. So the thought is, how do you make those in a digital space, or how do you bring them virtually to the fans? One thing we've been doing is, Bernie going to schools and homeschools and doing virtual visits that way. So at least we're still engaging with our fans in a different space than we're used to, because like Clara said, we don't know when we're getting back to the live event possibility. Hopefully, even if we do games without fans, we'll still be able to have smaller gatherings where we can have fans together, and then we can bring our show and still entertain them. Because one of the things that I didn't mention before, but part of our job is still doing events. So it's not just the game night things, but also offsite events. Anything that you see in the community or any kind of fan engagement activities, those are driven by us as well. So that's really where our focus is right now, is how to engage the fans moving forward in this new normal.
That's great. Yeah, it's definitely a new world for all of us, wouldn't you say? Yeah. So you know what? I want to ask you one more question right now before I open it up for the questions. Tell me, both of you, what the best thing about your job is. Josh, you want to start with that? What's the best thing about your job?
It's 2 words. It's really easy. She mentioned, Clara mentioned them both first, culture and family. I mean, there's no better place to work. I haven't worked anywhere else, but I can already tell you there's no better place to work. I've grown up with Clara. Clara is my work mom. She knows that. We joke about that all the time. I learned how to be a manager and leader with Clara. I got my promotion in line at the same times, and we came up together. Sean, like I said, taught me everything I know. He's my big brother. And everyone around our office just emits that characteristic of culture and family. And if you don't last where we work. So, Josh,
I want you to know that's a very beautiful and rare thing. So, it's Good
It
for
really
you, my
is.
friend. Really
I
great.
definitely consider myself blessed and lucky.
We have that same type of culture with After School All Stars. That's one of the reasons I liked coming to this organization, for the same reason. It's rare because I worked in corporate America for many years. So if you can find that kid, stick with it. Stay with that job. Clara, how about you? Best part of your job?
Josh basically said it. It's the people. Like when dealing with our talent, our dancers, our mascot, I did a lot of their outside bookings. So your after school all stars event that you guys do usually in December, I'm the contact for that. And a lot of the organizations around South Florida, schools, things like that. So it's just the people. It's the people I work with in my office, but it's also clients that I've dealt with in the past, people that have now become really good friends and personally, and people who've become pen pals that I take care of in New York. Like it's the people. It allows me to meet different types of people and get to know different types of people. And I love hearing people's stories. So that's the best part of my job.
I love that. That's great. In fact, someone put in the chat, great role models. And I think they're right. You're both great role models. So let's open it up for some of the questions. We've got some great questions coming in. The first question is, do you have any trophies from the Miami Heat?
Trophies, no, but we have rings.
We do.
Do you have any one of the rings available to show the kids?
If you give me a second, I can go get them.
Go get a ring. Go get a
All
ring.
right, one second.
I'm
Okay.
going to let Josh handle that. My rings are locked up and I don't have them anywhere close to me. I locked them away because I was so fearful of them, but I have all three of them, 2006, 2012, and 2013. So
That's
people
awesome.
in my household are hoping that I leave them for them if I ever leave this earth.
You have to put it in your will, right?
Yeah, my husband's picking because my 2006 has my maiden name on it, and then the other two have my married name on it. So he's like, I want this one. I'm like, the kids get to pick first.
That's great. Oh, here's Josh with his ring. Oh, look at that. Awesome.
So this is the display case. So you can see both of them. This is when we won back to back.
That's awesome. How many people are excited to see that? Put it in the chat. Oh, I see already. They're jumping in. Wow. Sean has his too. Sean, show yours. Oh, look at that. It's gorgeous. Sean, you got yours too?
And it's got my name on it, which is
Look
amazing.
at that. Yep. Goshin, it's in the Heat championship. That's awesome. Oh, pretty. Awesome. Wee-hoo. This is cool. Amazing. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. These are all the chats coming in. Thank you for sharing that, Josh. Oh, look at that.
Sean's got me beat.
There's Sean. Sean's got 3 of them.
Sean's got me beat.
Well, Sean's like Clara. He's got 3. She's got 3, right?
Yep.
You guys did it together at the same time. Amazing. That's cool. I've got some great feedback. They love it. That's awesome. Okay, so let's go on with the questions. How many people work for the Heat full-time or part-time?
I guess I'll take that one because I actually know the numbers.
Yep.
I think full-time between our office staff, our basketball ops staff, we have what's called our G League team, which is our development team. I think our staff number is at like 400 ish. And
Wow.
then with all of our part-time staff, I think that bumps us up to 700 or 800 because we have a lot of part-time staff that handles like being our ushers, our ticket takers, our greeters, things like that.
That's a lot. Woo, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you guys had that many full-time.
Yeah.
So, but it takes a village to put on things like the basketball games, that's for sure, and everything else you do. Okay, here's another one. This one's for Josh. What are some of the hardest things you do in the entertainment process in a game?
Well, I would say it's not a lot of hard and difficult stuff, but you definitely have to pay attention to the minor details. A lot of the things we do are tied to corporate partners. And so, I'm not the one making the announcement. I'm not the one hosting the on-court contest. So I have to have my faith and my trust in that person who is, and that person has to be able to say the sponsor's name right, has to be able to convey the talking points correctly so that the client's happy and so that the fans are engaged and they're still enjoying the game atmosphere. Like when you did the poll or asked a question earlier about, what fans like about going to the game. You know, there were some people who did mention everything. So you're talking about Bernie, you're talking about the fire, talking about all of these little things, or big things in some scales that everybody's got their eyes on and is watching. So you have to make sure that it's all working cohesively together and makes sense and is entertaining and engaging at the same time. So there's a lot of little specific details that go into everything, every kind of planning and preparation for this stuff.
I think that's great to point out, because I think when you put on productions, people don't realize all the things that go in, all the little pieces that make it. They just sit back and go, wow, this is amazing. But all the work you have to put into it to make it so amazing. It's a lot of work, and it's good to know when people are interested in jobs like this.
I would say for, let's say, a 2.5 hour game, 5 hour experience, that takes a month to plan. You know, from all the things that you want to script in the game, which is done in meetings, and then to actually scripting the game takes a day, maybe 2 days, and then actually getting to the performance, which is the show.
That's great. Okay, so another question. We have one from Tasari, I think is how you say your name. What is the biggest challenge you face? What are the biggest challenges that you would have faced in your job, or that you do face?
Is that for both of us?
Yeah, either one. Or how about Clara? We'll go back and forth.
I think right now, at this present time, it's just continuing to be creative. And I think it's like that a lot of times, but right now, especially when we're disconnected and trying to figure out what our new, quote unquote, new normal, the term my boss absolutely loves, will be, it's hard to just continue to be creative and churn out those ideas. So finding inspiration and keeping myself kind of, active in that mindset is a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now the challenge is figuring out what our industry is going to look like after this.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are thinking right now, right? Especially in the world that you're in. Like you said, with all the people, I mean, you rely on people coming to the games. So we have a couple more questions about the rings. One person wants to know does everyone get a ring, a heat ring, if they win a championship? Does everybody, all the staff? And if so, are they made of real diamonds?
Ours are diamonds.
Yeah.
So it is real diamonds. They can cut class, as they say.
They can. Our owner is extremely generous. That's a good thing about where we work and being family, that all of our full-time staff got rings when we got them, and then our part-time staff were eligible to get them as well. It just kind of depended with them. I can't remember what the criteria was, but they actually made them available to our staff and gave them to our full-time staff. So it was, a lot of teams don't necessarily do that. Their players get them, or only the front office staff gets them. But you'll see a lot of people walking around with them that you're like, how'd you get that? And it's, I worked for the team at the time, and they gave it to me. Yeah,
that's great. So, we're running out of time, but I want to answer one more question, and actually two, because one of them was something that I was going to ask you at the end anyway. So this question is, do you see more departments or positions being created due to COVID-19? What do you think?
I think right now, no, because everybody's trying to be fiscally responsible.
Right.
I don't know if there'll be more creation of departments, but I think people's roles will change because of how, and I think there more industry will be created, not necessarily departments for us, but I just look at, I read an article today about all the stores that are closing down or closing stores. And I just see a ton of opportunity digitally for digital storefronts and things like that. I think, with restaurants having to change how they do things, there are ideas there that will be generated based on this change. So I don't know if, like Josh said, necessarily with us, we'll create new departments, just because at this time I don't see that happening fiscally. But in terms of later on and in terms of other industries, I do think that there will be creation of new positions and new roles that didn't exist before.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the last question I always like to ask, but before we end out, is to ask you if you have words of inspiration, maybe your favorite quote, or just, like I said, words of inspiration that you like to share. And one of the questions that came in was, what's your inspiration to continue to survive? So would love to hear both of your feedback on that.
Ladies first.
Oh, of course you're gonna let me go first. I think I have a couple things. My motivation to survive is my family, and you know, all the things I've been through in my life. Like, I'm that person. I don't really stop going. My husband talks about, he goes, "You're busier now than before COVID." He goes, "I come home and you're just here." But it's because of them. You know, my daughter looks at me, she goes to work with me. We use her as a model for things like, so to constantly keep going, she's my motivation, and my family. I think mindset is really big in just life. I think education is big in life. So continually learning, for me, is really important. Learning about myself, being self-aware. I will tell you this, kids, it's gold. If you can figure out being self-aware now, meaning knowing who you are, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you don't like, knowing your shortcomings, it will serve you very well in the future. So education for me is really important, and mindset. And my favorite quote having to do with mindset is from Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou. And it's, if you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, change your attitude. So a lot of times we complain about things and we're like, "I don't like this, blah, blah, blah." Either you're going to change it or you're going to change your mindset about it, because a lot of things in life aren't going away. So with work, with friends, with family, a lot of it's mindset and how you go about thinking about it.
I love that quote. Thank you. Josh, how about you? Inspirational quote? What keeps you?
My inspiration is 100% my family, my mother, my father, my brothers and sisters. I got tons of them. They are definitely what I aspire to make proud in what I do. And a lot of the activities and actions are geared towards that. Advice that I would give, like I said earlier, be willing to do whatever it takes to be successful, and also help the people that are around you and help them develop as well. Like I mentioned it earlier, but Sean really, like, I can't understate Sean's importance in my career growth. And so you guys have a resource in Sean that is, a wealth of knowledge. He was definitely a great teacher, and he provided the inspirational quotes for me. He provided the guidance and gave me the blueprint for success. So I would definitely tap into him.
Oh, now everybody's going to be calling Sean. That's awesome. Well, we're running out of time. I know more questions are coming in, but we're really at the end of our time frame. But I want to thank both Clara and Josh for being with us today. It sounds like you both are still having a lot of fun, even though you're working from home. You're still making it work, and you're putting in your all, and you're creating something new for the new world, so that we can have the NBA Miami Heat right here at home continually. So we thank you for all you do for the community, that you do for all of us as fans, and for you being here today and being inspirational to our students. I really have enjoyed this talk with you today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having us. It was a great time.
Well,
Thank you very much for having us and for listening to us speak.
Oh, it was so much fun, so much fun. And I'm just going to remind everybody that next week, May 28th, we have Maria Mayer. She's an FIU professor and conservationist, but you also may know her. She's a television host on the National Geographic Channel and the Director of Exploration and Science Communications Initiative. So she's going to be sharing with us all next week about her travels. She has found endangered species that they thought some species were extinct, and she found them in the jungle. She has an amazing show. She's going to share with you what she does when she's out saving the world and saving our planet in a lot of ways. And I think some of you even have studied her in class. So we're excited she's going to be with us next week. And again, we're just so thrilled that you're all with us today. So thank you again, Clara and Josh, and to all of you who came in today to listen to us. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. We'll listen to a little Miami Heat song as we head out. Everybody dance.